A federal judge has ruled in favor of the Trump administration's hospital price transparency rule. The lawsuit was an attempt to block a federal rule that would have required hospitals to share pricing information, including negotiated rates. The U.S. District Court Judge Nichols granted summary judgment and agreed that this rule was a good idea. It would empower patients to make price comparisons between hospitals, and he heralded the transparency coming out of this administration's rule. The Trump administration actually issued this final rule on price transparency in healthcare back in November of 2019. The final rule has a long title. It's called Calendar Year 2020 Outpatient Prospective Payment System and Ambulatory Surgical Center Price Transparency Requirements for Hospitals to Make Standard Charges Public. It is distinct from a different proposed rule about transparency in coverage, more on the insurance side. We have videos that are separate from this on both of those rules as they appear in their earlier format. We will link to those in the description below. But this rule that came out of the Trump administration was actually following a June 2019 executive order signed by President Trump, the name which being Improving Price and Quality Transparency in American Healthcare to Put Patients First. The order directed the Department of Health and Human Services to propose some regulations to require hospitals to make publicly posted standard charge information to increase the availability of meaningful price and quality information for patients so they could make better healthcare decisions. The final rule would require hospitals to provide patients with clear, accessible information about their standard charges for items and services. Makes it easier to shop and compare across hospitals, and the final rule said this should be implemented in early 2021. Well, a lawsuit was filed. December 4th, hospitals and hospital groups sued the Trump administration to try to block this rule from taking effect. It was filed in the U.S. District Court, which is why Judge Nichols was the one that was hearing it. The hospital groups that sued include the American Hospital Association, the Association of Medical Colleges, Association of Children's Hospitals, Federation of American Hospitals, and several individual hospitals. They did not want this negotiated price information to become public. The hospitals argued that the Trump administration actually exceeded its legal authority in requiring them to produce this information publicly. The disclosure requirements, these hospital groups said, actually violated their First Amendment rights, and they didn't want to let patients see things like payer-specific negotiated charges or the minimum and maximums of things that are called shoppable services like labs and x-rays. They wanted to keep that under lock and key. And Judge Nichols disagreed. He said that's not good information for patients to do it this way. He actually called their First Amendment argument half-hearted. HHS Secretary Azar called the decision a resounding victory in efforts to open up the convoluted world of healthcare pricing so patients and families can make better informed decisions about their care. Now remember, Azar comes from HHS. HHS is the agency that was charged with writing this rule. So he agreed that Judge Nichols was coming down on the right side of history, saying we need to actually try to figure out this convoluted world of healthcare pricing and costs, and making sure patients can see what the costs are in advance and be able to actually shop for healthcare services is going to achieve that end. And he added, especially during a public health emergency. Now, again, this rule, if it ultimately does take effect, wouldn't happen until 2021. And the American Hospital Association said soon after Judge Nichols' decision that it would indeed appeal this ruling. You can read the final rule. We link to it in the description below. We gave you a couple quotes. We link to those in the description below as well.